What's going on YouTube? It's Go Battle Life, and today we're doing a showcase of a team that I've been running recently in the Ultra League, and this team actually was fairly successful in my opinion. I actually been using this team for a couple days now, and this team got me really far, and I'm almost in the veterans rank. And again, I'm not the best battler in the world, but at the same time, I am pretty fairly decent since I am able to push up, but I also run some funky teams and use different Pokemon, so I do drop in ranks a lot. But anyways, let's get into these battles right now. Alright, starting off our first battle right here, we lead into a Swampert, and of course we level our Tapu Fini. So right here, I'm going to just keep on farming up until I get to a Moonblast, but he threw it anyway before I was able to reach the Moonblast. So right here, we're able to tank an Earthquake fairly well. So I'm going to just keep on farming up until I could get some extra energy, but he goes straight for the Hydro Cannon. So I will actually shield this up. Oh, I actually went for a Surf, so he's running Surf. And right here, I go for my own Surf, but he does shield it up as we both burn shields. Right here, I decided to try to bait him for his last shield with a Surf before I reach the Moonblast. But he actually didn't, so I actually just switched into my Cresselia, and now I'm farming up with a lot of energy, and I'm able to go for this Future Sight right here, and this will connect with the Charizard. So at this point, this Charizard isn't really a threat to me because it is in range of any other charge move I go for, so I am going to go for the resisted Moonblast when I get to the energy. So right here, I'm able to go for it right now, and will it connect? No, he actually burns his last shield on that, so I'm able to just keep on farming up extra energy. And I decide right here to burn my last shield because I can't outpace him to the next charge move, but I decided to switch in my Tapu Fini and get extra energy off on it. But right here, he's switching to his Trevenant, and he should have just threw the Z-Bomb because I did reach the Moonblast, and this will connect with the Trevenant since he doesn't have any shields. And right here, I believe I decided to bring in my Steelix. Yes, I did decide to bring in my Steelix, so I am able to farm down the Swampert, and when the Trevenant comes back in, I will be able to just go for the Break and Swipe, and this will be taking out the Trevenant. Alright, our next battle right here, we lead into a Shadow Charizard, and this is a perfect lead for me, but my opponent switches out right away, and he switches out into a Crobat, so I switch him out Cresselia, and he actually just immediately puts out the game, so that's the easy one for me. In this next battle right here, we lead into a Gardevoir, and this isn't the worst lead for me, but at the same time, this isn't the best lead for me, but my opponent switches out into a Breloom, so I switch out into my Cresselia, and this Cresselia is actually great against this because I am running Future Sight and a Dazzling Gleam, so my opponent is actually just going to be throwing his charge moves back to back, and since I can tank these easily, I will not be shielding, so I go straight for the Moonblast right here because it will be able to take him out. But I was actually fairly happy he didn't waste the shield, but at the same time I was hoping he wasted the shield. But he brings in the Arcanine, and I go straight for the Future Sight, and this actually connects on the Arcanine because my opponent just doesn't want to lose the shield advantage. But I'm able to reach another Moonblast, and as he was able to try to farm me down, so I will be able to catch one of the shields. So I switch into my Tapu Fini, and the Tapu Fini, I will burn one of the shields because I know it will be a wild charge. And now I'm able to, he switches into his Gardevoir, and now I'm able to go straight for the Surf and switch into my Steelix. And this isn't the best response to a Gardevoir, but I can't tank anything that it throws at me, so I will just be farming up to Earthquake, I believe. And my opponent doesn't have any shields, so he won't be able to shield these, but he goes for another triple Axle before he goes down. So I overfarm a little bit and actually go straight for the Earthquake. So when the Arcanine comes in, I was gonna try to bank a Break and Swipe, but my opponent concedes the match anyway. Alright, in this next battle, we lead into a Alolan Muk, and this is not the best lead for me at all. So I switch on to my Steelix, and I'm already banking a Break and Swipe, but my opponent goes straight for the Dark Pulse when he gets there. And the Dark Pulse actually did some decent amount of damage. So right now I'm going straight for the Break and Swipe to chip down his, or to debuff his attack. And actually at this point, I was gonna go for the second one, but my opponent just throws another Dark Pulse, and it's still doing a fairly decent amount. So I overfarmed to an Earthquake, and right here I believe I had to burn a shield. Yes, I did have to burn a shield, but he goes for another Dark Pulse, so I go straight for another Break and Swipe. And I was hoping he was going to shield it up, but my opponent decides not to shield it up, and I am able to farm him down and bank another Earthquake. But right here he's switching to a Scizor, so I go straight for a Break and Swipe, and the Break and Swipe did no type of damage. So I am able to get to the Earthquake, and I will be able to go straight for the Earthquake, and it actually does connect on our Scizor. And he actually switches into his Giratina, so I try to bank a Break and Swipe, but the Break and Swipe, I wasn't able to reach it there in time, but my opponent actually concedes that match as well. Alright, this next matchup right here, we lead into a Charizard, and this is actually a great lead for me, but my opponent switches right out to the Giratina. So I bring out my Steelix, and the Steelix is running Dragon Tail, so the fast move is super effective. But my opponent goes straight for the Dragon Claw, I believe. But you can see we're dealing with the lag right now. And I am able to just tank that fairly good. Like, it's actually doing no damage, but I do go straight for the breaking swipe. And again, dealing with the lag is kind of ridiculous. But since the breaking swipe is super effective, it's going to be doing some good chunk damage on it. And since it's not a stab move and it doesn't really have a high base power on it, it's not really doing the most damage as possible. But I am able to switch out and catch the hydro cannon on my Tapu Fini. And my opponent is just going to keep on farming up and just keep on throwing these hydro cannons. And it's actually doing some good, decent damage. Honestly, it's doing more than my breaking swipes on the Giratina. But at the same time, my opponent can't really tank a lot of charge moves that I'm throwing at him. But so he decides to shield up the Surf. And my opponent actually goes straight for another hydro cannon when he gets there. So I am able to tank one more. And I do have some additional health. But I am able to switch out to my Steelix and catch Dragon Claw. And this is actually going to do like no damage again. So I am able to go straight for another breaking swipe. And this breaking swipe will be taking out the Giratina. After this lag, there you go. And I believe my opponent comes back out with the Swampert. Yes, he does. So I go straight for another breaking swipe. And I was hoping my opponent shield this up. And he decides to actually not shield that up, and now I'm able to make it to another breaking swipe, and this breaking swipe will be taking out the Swampert if he doesn't shield, but he decides to shield. So he brings out he switches on to his Charizard, and I switch on to my Tapu Fini and go straight for the Surf, and this Surf actually did some great damage against the Charizard. Right here, since I do have 2 shields and I have this bulky Cresselia at the end, this Cresselia will be able to clean up the rest of these Pokemon right here. I could tank it. I didn't even need a shield right here. I could have 2 shield flexed him, but honestly, I just decided to shield, and he decides to concede the match anyway. Alright, this next matchup, this is the weirdest battle I ever had. So I have this like on a lot of, it's like faster than the other videos. But as you can see, I'm farming up with the Tapu Fini. And you can see the lag that's going on right now. So I am able to take out the Gliscopod. And as you can see, the opponent is not playing at all. So I'm going to just over farm and just farm down this Charizard. And my opponent, the moment this game stopped lagging, he brings in the Obstagoon. I go straight for the Moonblast. The Moonblast is going to almost take out the Obstagoon. I believe, yeah, it gets some in the red. So at this point, I'm like, I could just farm him down. It's going to end the game faster. But right here, I'm not able to go for any water guns. And I switch out into my Cresselia to try to just get the Psycho Cut farm down. But as you can see, it's not working. So I'm sitting here just trying. I'm waiting for the switch timer at this point. I'm like, all right, like, just come back. I'm going to switch back out, try to go for a charge move and just take out my opponent. Now I can't even switch out. I'm tapping both Pokemon. I'm like, oh my gosh, like this game. So I decided to close out the game. And when I decided to go back into the battles, as you can see, I got 1 loss. And that was a new set for that battle. But anyways, let's get into this next battle. We lead into a Shadow Snorlax. And the Shadow Snorlax isn't a bad lead for my opponent. At the same time, I am able to just do some good, decent damage with any charge move. So I decided to try to bait with the Surf. But my opponent actually did fall for the bait, so he did shield it up. So I actually just switch on to my Steelix. I'll try to catch the Body Slam, but my opponent actually goes straight for the Superpower. Right here, I shield the first one. And then the second one, I decide not to shield since he is debuff. But my opponent switches on to Armored Mewtwo. And this is actually a weird Pokemon to run in his lead. My opponent actually didn't shield up this Breaking Swipe when I had the, I believe I charged up to the Earthquake. And now he actually just shielded up this Breaking Swipe. So now I'm going for my 3rd Breaking Swipe right now. And this is actually going to connect on my opponent. And now he's -3 in the attack. And now he goes straight for a charge move. And he goes for the Dynamic Punch. And I tank that easily. But now my opponent actually goes for another Dynamic Punch. But I'm like, oh, he actually goes for the Side Strike. But I was like, I banked the Breaking Swipe. So I am able to switch out and go to my Tapu Fini. And I could tank another Side Strike easily. And now I am able to farm him down, so he switches back onto his Snorlax. And since he doesn't have no shields, this Shadow Snorlax cannot tank the Moonblast. Since my opponent's last Pokemon is Mandibuzz, I go straight for the Moonblast when I get there. And that actually did some good damage on it. So now I switch back onto my Steelix. And I just hit him with the Breaking Swipe just to debuff his attack. Because I know I have to finish this game with the Cresselia, but I am able to make it to another Breaking Swipe. And this actually did almost take him out. And I was like, damn, I could have farmed him down if anything. But I switch on to my Cresselia. He goes straight for the aerial ace, and my opponent actually just throws his last charge move, and he should have just let me farm him down. But as you can see, my opponent concedes the match before I am able to farm him down. Alright, in this battle right here, we lead into a Shadow Swampert, and this is actually a great lead for me because since it is Shadow, it is weaker in its defense. So I ain't able to make it to a Surf, but I decided to overfarm past it. And my opponent actually throws straight the Earthquake, but I was expecting the Sludge Wave since Shadow Swamperts and regular Swampers run a Sludge Wave nowadays. But right here, he shows up my first Surf, and I am able to just go for another Surf when I get there. So my opponent actually decides to show up both Surfs because they will be able to take him out. So I'll switch out to my Cresselia. And I was just hoping that he was thinking that I was running in Grass Knot. But right here, I decided not to shield up the Night Slash because my Cresselia can't take it. And I go straight for the Moonblast. And this Moonblast will be almost taking out the Greninja. But now, my opponent actually decides to throw another Night Slash. And I decided to just let it go down. And I am able to get some more energy on the Tapu Fini when my opponent, against this Greninja, I'm sorry. But now my opponent decides to bring back, I believe he brings back out the, oh no, he actually brings out the Muck. So I actually just switch on to the Steelix, and my opponent brings back in the Shadow Swampert, and I can't take one Hydro Cannon. So I decided to try to farm him down, and I am able to farm him down. So my opponent actually brings back in the Muck, and I go straight for the Earthquake, and this Earthquake will be doing some great damage against this Muck. And it did almost take him out, but at the same time, my opponent decides to just throw his last move. And it was just an Acid Spray, but I am able to farm him down and take the game. Alright, in this next battle right here, we lead into Virizion. And this Virizion actually checks my Tapu Fini fairly well. So I bring in my Cresselia, and I actually farm up to the, well, now I'm over farming past the Moonblast and this Future Sight, but I go straight for the Future Sight. My opponent decides not to shield that. And that shield actually not shielding that was actually crucial because I can't almost take out the Shadow Charizard, but now the Shadow Charizard will be able to just get taken out by this next Future Sight. I should have just went for the Moonblast, but the Moonblast is resisted. I didn't want to risk it. But right now, I could just shield up this safely, and it is a Stone Edge, so I did actually, that was a good shield on my end. But now my opponent goes for another Stone Edge, and he actually takes me out. So right here, I was conflicted on what to go into, but I just bring back in the Tapu Fini, and my opponent actually has a Walrein in the back. So I bring in my Steelix, and I go straight for the Breaking Swipe when I get there. My opponent actually makes it to an Earthquake already, so I decided to shield this up because it is max attack. So I decided to just debuff it, and since I am down both shields now, I have to be a little more cautious against his Virizion in the back. But now I'm gonna just keep on just spamming these Breaking Swipes, and at this point, I'm gonna just try to get as much damage off as possible, especially against the Virizion. Well, I am able to tank one Earthquake, and he actually switches into his Virizion. And he goes straight for, I believe, the Sacred Sword. And the Sacred Sword, they almost take me out. But he is able to get one fast move through. And he actually shields that up. So I go straight for the Moonblast right here. And I was hoping it's actually connected. And it actually does. So my opponent actually didn't want to shield that up, trying to call it bait. But he actually called that wrong. Anyways, in this next battle right here, we lead into a Gliscopod. And a Gliscopod is kind of a bad lead for me. But I do resist both his charge moves. But the fast move is going to be a problem if he do get some debuffs with the liquidation. So I decided to just switch on to my Steelix, try to catch another X-Scissor, which I did, which is good on my end. But my opponent switches into his Tapu Fini. So now I'm going to just try to debuff him as much as possible. Because the Tapu Fini against the Tapu Fini is a good matchup. But at the same time, one is always bulkier than the other, and one always hits harder than the other. So right here, he goes straight for the Surf. And I decided to just go for another Breaking Swipe. And the Breaking Swipe is going to just not get shielded since it is resisted and does minimum damage. But I just doing it for the debuffs. So I go for a third one right here. And this third one is actually good because now my opponent is -3. And I go straight for the Surf, trying to get him to shield it up. And my opponent actually decides not to shield it up. So I was like, dang, I could have just went straight for the Moonblast. So right here, now we're in the battles of the shield. So my opponent actually goes straight for another X-Scissor. And I get to a Moonblast, and I'm hoping my opponent actually doesn't shield this one up. But he actually does shield this up. And that's actually disappointing because I was hoping that I was going to be able to take out the Gliscopod with it. But I just switched into my Steelix, hoping that he was going to just throw his charge move. But my opponent just didn't fold. He just farmed down the Steelix, and he goes straight for a liquidation right here, trying to get the debuff in my defense. But my opponent actually goes straight for the X's right here, so I just decided to tank that up. And I try to throw the Moonblast, but he wanted CMP Tide, and he goes straight for another X Scissor. And I didn't want to give him my last shield because I was hoping it was a good matchup with his last Pokemon. But right here he goes straight, I believe he just goes straight for the Moonblast trying to take me out, but he actually based me with a Surf. And now he made it to another Surf, and the Surf is actually doing some great damage, and it actually does take me out. Anyways, thank you for watching this video. I hope you guys enjoyed the rest of your day. Be sure to like and subscribe, and be sure to comment down below on what you thought about this video. Thank you. Bye.